Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner Podcast,
a podcast where we dig into the fascinating issues, conditions, and quandaries in the massage and manual therapy world today.
I'm Whitney Lowe.
And I'm Til Luchau.
Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner.
The Thinking Practitioner podcast is supported by ABMP Associated Bodywork and Massage Professionals. ABMP membership gives professional practitioners like you a package including individual liability insurance, free continuing education, and quick reference apps, online scheduling, and payments with Pocket Suite, and much more. ABMP CE courses, podcast, and Massage and Bodywork magazine always feature expert voices and new perspectives in the profession, including Whitney Lowe and myself, Til Luchau. Thinking Practitioner listeners can save on joining ABMP at abmp.com/thinking. Today, I am honored to welcome a true pioneer in the world of movement and somatic exploration, Nita Little. As a foundational figure in contact improvisation, Nita, you have spent decades researching the intelligence of the body in motion, the things like the relational nature of touch, and the deep listening that emerges through this particular dance form. Your work bridges dance, embodied cognition, and somatics, offering insights into presence, perception, and the ways we connect through touch. For bodyworkers, our audience here, your perspective, and for me as a bodyworker, your perspective has opened new ways of understanding hands-on practice and see it not just as a technique, but as, not just the techniques we do, but as dynamic, responsive dialogue with the other person involved. And I'm really thrilled to have this conversation with you. Welcome, Nita.
You're mentioning all the key areas that excite me. So,
well, I've gotten to be in your event, your trainings, a couple times now, and we've had a bit of conversations. And I've been excited to have you this extended conversation with you today. Can you say a little more for our listeners about the work you teach and maybe what drew you to it?
Well, initially I was a dancer. I'd been a dancer since I was a tiny person, and known I was a dancer since I was maybe 11 years old. Just knew that was my drive. That was who I would be in life. So that's easy. The being a mover was easy. Initially, I wanted to be a contemporary dancer and became a contemporary dancer. But through the course of my education, I met Steve Paxton at a moment when he was interested in reflexive action, had just been working with men at Oberlin College, and he was he's a postmodern Judson pioneer, Judson era pioneer, if you know dance history.
I don't, but that's good. That's
a really big turning point in compositional thinking for dance. Influenced by musician John Cage and dance choreographer Merce Cunningham, his partner. And anyway, Steve was interested in improvisational action that produced reflexive events. And I, at that time, was interested in, I was an advanced dancer interested in improvisation, developing as a choreographer. And he was my teacher in composition and at Bennington College. And I was interested in what could happen in movement that when two people didn't determine what was going to happen, but they were in touch, and one was sharing weight, one person going up on another's shoulder and then coming back down, but nobody determining how that would happen. So it had to be a negotiation. And And
We have a couple of important elements there. One is touch, which is relevant to our field. The other is improvisational, meaning they're following each other.
right. And Steve, a master at improvisation, and I was a developing improviser. And Steve had a history of he was studying Aikido and Tai Chi in New York City, and he was quite expert in both of those. And so that information was infiltrating what happened when we went into a studio to kind of explore what this could be. Now, it was an unequal relationship because I was a student, of course, and Steve had ways of understanding movement that I didn't have yet. He knew how to ask questions of movement to seek the principles, not the action itself. That was so exhilarating to me, such a huge shift in how I could understand the making of movement. And it basically produced what became contact improvisation. And
you're describing an ability he had to somehow open up an inquiry as opposed to imparting a form or a method or something like that.
And he kind of profoundly believed that everybody knows how to do this. That's part of his interest in reflexive action. What we came to really understand, and reflexive action, everybody knows how to do, right?
Tell us what you mean. What's reflexive action?
Reflexive action. So the reflexive action is you touch a hot stove, your hand is already moving before you know it.
Okay.
Away from the stove. You fall to the floor. You hit somebody and you head into falling. Your body takes shapes to preserve and protect parts of you that need, you don't fall face first unless you're stone drunk or something. Something's intervening those capacities. Otherwise, you will protect yourself, right? Instantly. That this kind of interiority of knowing oneself without having to think about it. It's not brain-based. It's not neural, it doesn't have to go up here before it happens.
Okay.
That instant action. It's not considered, in other words. Now, reflexes can be trained. And so a lot of what we were doing was training reflexes.
Okay, so how about touch in CI, in contact improvisation? How has your understanding of it changed or evolved over the decades you've been doing this? How about touch?
I think initially it was with respect to touch, I was raised with brothers, and we were always grappling one way or another. So we were like in there moving against bodies, with bodies, generally not in sweet ways. Generally, somebody's playing with the other. But so being highly physical with another body was an easy place for me. And then as a dancer, it was always an easy place. I think it was a gift to me being raised with brothers. As I went in, as contact developed, figuring out the varieties of ways that we could touch opened up this understanding that touch was critical, not only to what I was doing, but to how I was communicating with another body. And I didn't, in the early days, have language to describe that. So a lot of the past 53 years have been figuring out the language to describe phenomenon that can be felt and acted on, but not spoken about. And
Touch is like that. Bodies are like that.
yeah,
And that's touch being the most obvious place that contact improv overlaps with bodywork and massage. And yet it's a really different. I've learned a lot about touch just through these last couple of years of diving into contact improv myself.
at one point I did a piece called These Gifts Were Handed Through a Hole. It was, in the era, we're talking in the 80s, 70s.
Okay.
70s. I think I did a dance piece at the Art Museum and Museum of Art in Berkeley, at UC Berkeley. And it was early contact. And the image, this was the day when I was doing the I Ching, did the I Ching, put my hand there, and this is what the title came up to be. So, Chance Procedures with Merce Cunningham. And but the image for me was always that the point of contact was a hole.
All right. A hole.
Was a thoroughfare through which information was passing, gifts were passing.
Yes.
We understand one another through that hole.
Yes.
So when you ask how things evolved for me, I kind of in the late 70s was there. And from there it developed.
Yeah, and you mentioned how it's not the same as talking, or that putting it into words is sometimes challenging. But so I had a great conversation with Alicia Grayson here on the podcast, and we talked a lot about body work and contact. But there's something I'm trying to articulate for myself about the learning I've done about touch as a toucher professional toucher for 40 years, moving into a new format here, the contact form. It's opened up, it's refined what I do, and it's opened up different possibilities, I'd say. In my hands-on work, in body work, I'm touching mostly with my hands. And yet in contact, we are using the more than just the hands.
Right. Well, since, in my growth and development, when I was thinking it was a whole,
Yes.
I was thinking of mind and body as two different functions, and mind passing through that whole. And eventually by the 90s, maybe the early 2000s, I was then saying, that's not really what it's different than that.
Okay, so here's the evolution
I
piece.
think of mind and body as a single action of being, as critical to what we understand as being. And if my image is the image of a Mobius being a three-dimensional object with a single surface. So it's a remarkable form. If you take a strip of paper and you put one twist in and you bring it together, Now you have a Mobius. The thing about a Mobius is that time is implicated in its single surface, because you have to run your finger along the form to realize that the inside becomes the outside, becomes the inside, becomes the outside.
I'm still struck by the whole image. And you said that was the 70s or 80s, and then it became
the whole image, the image of the whole. So let me take you to the Mobius and why I bring the Mobius up.
Okay, so
The Mobius is one surface. If one were to make a circle of a strip of paper, you've got an inside and an outside. But with the Mobius, when you put that twist in it, the inside is the outside, the inside is the outside, as long as you're moving along that Mobius. If you stop anywhere on the Mobius, you've got an inside and an outside. So if you die, if you kill the object, if time no longer is implied in it, now you've got an inside and an outside, if you're on the surface of the Mobius. So mind-body, to me, is a Mobius. You stop anywhere, you register any moment, you take a picture, you study this moment alone, not in time. You've got both a mind and a body. If the object is moving, if there's time, it's a mind-body. So what time does in my world is it brings mind-body into this instant of presence of being.
there's a way. I'm really interested in hearing you talk more than I'm interested in hearing myself talk, but you're spurring all kinds of ideas for me. Like, one is that sometimes when I'm doing body work, I imagine stopping time through the interaction.
Okay, so
I imagine that the medium I'm actually working with in my hand is time, and maybe I could even slow it down, manipulate it, change our perception of time, bring out some sort of timelessness.
So in my belief, every instant is eternity. We can enter into it in some extraordinary eternity. In this dive into an instant that is not stopping time exactly. It's doing a different thing than stopping time. It's not killing the Mobius. It's a different action. So when you stretch something that is in motion, so that the instant now is this profoundly deep cavern of being, of this moment. I don't think of that stopping. I think of that as this simultaneous action to the play of time. And I think of stopping as that thing that we do in science when we stay on the same scale as the human and we stop the thing.
It's a very different action to push the button on a stopwatch and stop time than it is to be touching someone else and enter into that.
Exactly. Those are not the same. Yeah. So maybe the variations of what it means to stop, stretch, enter. I think of what you're talking about when you're going inside and finding that eternal moment is you're in an entering. In contact terms, which are touch terms, we can experience time in thin slices or in chunks, durations. A chunk is a duration. As limited beings, we might hold the same amount of information in any moment like we have a limited amount of information we can hold as conscious information. It's something we can describe. However, it really matters if you're holding it in a thin slice, that much information in a thin slice, as opposed to over a duration. Right?
Yes.
That thin slice orients all that information in a depth, and the next thin slice can be a different depth. I mean, or be a different alignment of information.
Each thin slice being independent from the next.
Yeah. This and this and this and this. So as action happens really, really fast, if you thin slice, you can detail what's going on. You can experience it as slow, with lots of knowing what's happening. If you're experiencing something that happens very fast as a duration, it'll be happening and you won't even know what to do about it because there's not enough information to act. You can't possibly act.
Okay, what about uncertainty? Like, what about when we don't know what to do in the next slice? I'm thinking about just the juxtaposition of having a plan in a bodywork session and following the moment. What about those uncertain places?
So let's say within the touch, the realm of touch.
Great.
Touch always touches and is touched in return. It's never just doing one thing. That's my whole image, right? That's why it works as a whole.
Even when I'm using my hand, even when I'm using my hands with a client and I am in quotes touching them, you're saying I'm being touched. I'm both touching
Being
and
touched in return.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you're good at that,
good at
you
being
jump-
touched.
good at being touched,
Nice.
good at being touched, then when someone's working on you, you're right there you're touching back, saying hello, 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 in all of those places. And that's why body work is fun. It's a challenge because sometimes the body worker is going into places that have not said hello in so long, and inviting those parts of myself to say hello back. And to say welcome, hello and welcome, hello and where do you want to go? I'll go there with you. You know, that opening, that saying, here's the opening. Can I open? Can I open? How deep can the hello go? That's my challenge as being worked on. I don't think I've ever said that before, but that's what I'm doing.
That's great. You said the challenge is the hello that happens within yourself, with your own
Return hello that meets.
The meets. Okay.
Yeah. That enters, in fact, if I can. Not just touches the surface of you, but enters into you.
Okay, we got hello. And I'm smiling because I'm remembering your workshop here in Boulder, and we spent a bunch of time on hello. We actually encountered you brought that theme up in a very rich way, and we spent time in movement, in our attention, in our touch, perhaps, really exploring this idea of encountering, of greeting, and how do I bring myself to it? What happened in those moments? I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I like the hello dance too.
Yeah.
And one you can do over and over again. I can do over and over again and keep going further.
Well, so is that all this thin slice thing is? Is it just hello after hello?
Yeah. In so many ways, yeah. And when you talk about that eternal moment, yeah, that's the hello that just won't stop. When we talk about, or when we think about time as having this capacity to open and be entered, and touch allows that availability, because touch is deep. Touch is dimensional. Eyes see surfaces. They see light reflecting.
Eyes see surfaces, yes.
And we work conceptually to make the world a 3D world, right? I mean, we're structured so that we can see from this distance, which is not very great, the difference. So something kind of registers as 3D. This sees a different surface than this sees. So we kind of conceptually put it together into something. But the reason our eyes, we look at something and they are not still, they're constantly in motion, is so that we register as much as we can about the 3D as we, we're in minding the world. We're bringing the world into being.
Yeah.
And move around it by our motion, the motion of the eyes. Touch does a similar kind of thing, but touch already is acting in 3D because everything touches everything. I'm quoting Alvin Noe when I say that.
Alvin Noe
is a cognitive scientist, a philosopher who works with dance, works with William Forsythe, or did, and he registers. He's looking at how the world is, how a human is in minding. That presence for him, and he has a text. He was on my PhD committee, I must say. So I'm kind of an Alvin Noe fan. But he has a book called The Varieties of Presence, in which he's really interested in how we bring the world into being. So that action, for instance, of the eyes that I was talking about,
yes,
is critical. How and understanding how we presence, how we bring the world into being. It's fascinating to me.
Okay, I'm trying to catch up. There's this idea that with the eyes, we're seeing a surface. Our brain puts it together in our experience as a three-dimensional object by, you said, moving around. This is like the predictive.
Yeah.
Predictive coding. Same thing. Perpetual motion, micro motion. Yes.
Even tiny little.
This idea that we actually perceive only a little bit of our visual field clearly, and then the brain puts it into a whole for us. But you're saying touch.
Not only that, but we're humans have a blind spot in the middle of our vision that we're constantly filling in.
It's filled in. All right. Okay. So then in touch, you say touch is different and that touch touches everything.
Touch isn't everything. Touch has, attention has the capacity to organize the field of touch. I'm sure you're aware of that as you're working. Yeah?
In terms of 3 dimensions, absolutely. Yeah. I touch it in big, if that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
You touch in 3D, but you also can telescope in, telescope out your touch, can't you?
I think so. Yes.
Right?
I'm sure. Days.
You meet me somewhere and you'll be out in a broad sense. And then as you continue to work, you telescope in, maybe penetrating further, maybe entering into the particular.
Yes.
And but you have that capacity, that 3D capacity, because everything touches everything. Meaning that everywhere there is touch, everywhere there is something. It means that not that here I am, here I am actually touching everything because everything's touching everything. But as a human being, I can't travel that distance to you in Colorado just by doing this, right? Well, maybe I could in other capacities, other realms of touch.
Okay.
But in this realm of touch, it's not really functioning. I would like to put my hands on your face. Not happening.
Not gonna. Yes, in that way.
You're in Australia. By the way, I'm in Australia. So, right. And yet, that because everything's touching everything, my hand can touch my own face right now. I feel I can penetrate. I'm not stopped at the flesh. Right? Yeah. That tickle in my throat was right there. Where, doctor? Right there. You know, and you could go here as well. And I could touch my throat right here. So it's touch is kind of remarkable, deeply unexplored by contemporary humans. God only knows what previous humans have done, but touch is profound. And just how is it that we live in a world that is excluding touch from education? Oh, God. It's such a painful thing to me. I can't tell you.
Yes.
Going to cry. It's so painful to me that humans are choosing technology, cold steel, over human touch, a touch that has this extraordinary, variable, flexible mind. That it also is. It is mind. Why would you choose data over this extraordinary being we are? Oh my God. Anyway, enough said.
I don't know if there's ever enough said about that. And I think that is the subtext. That means for sure we're singing to the choir here. Because that's the reason people come to us. That's the reason we're involved in this work. That's maybe the most powerful single aspect. The fact that where the touch is so marginalized and so uncommon, and especially the kind of touch we're talking about in these two different domains. What?
Yeah. And it's not, you said the kind of touch we're talking about, but can I trouble that, Til? I'd like to trouble language.
Trouble it, please.
Because the kind of touch we're talking about presents it as a single kind. And I think in a world in which we don't know what a body-mind can do, and we don't know what a body-mind can do, the kinds of touch that are possible are innumerable, many more than we have yet conceived, yet experienced. And it is not simply a duality, this touch over that touch. sexual touch over healing touch, parental touch over help me
Friends, your friendly touch.
yes, that paranormal touch that people
Paranormal touch. Awesome.
right.
Okay.
What is that touch? What is that? But they call it paranormal simply because it's not been normalized. But there are kinds of touch that are totally unexplored, totally not even considered. And I don't know about you, but I have them. I have touch that happens to me all the time in different ways. Not all the time. That's being excessive. The world shows up in surprising ways. And if you are willing to hold things, to not try and define things really fast, to not try and grab a hold of what's happening, but you're allowing the world to show up and teach you, then then your availability for understanding the varieties of things we don't yet understand about being mind bodies is important. It's there. And I think it's not super. It's not, I say paranormal, and I'm sorry I even use those words because that makes it weird.
It's
And
a alliteration with parental. I really liked that, by the way. Parental paranormal. So you're juxtaposing things that, and thank you for troubling the language too, because box exited in my thinking about touch. Thank you for that. Out of the box.
Great. And that's why I think contact improvisation has an ability to explore the varieties of touch in new ways, that kind of clarity. What's the principle? What allows this to happen? When this, what then? That something like touch and play doesn't even come close to, because the second you have an agenda, watch the finger. I've learned this since being in India. I know got a new finger wag. The moment that you have an agenda, you now have limited the possibilities of touch to that agenda. And so I really speak to contactors and say, do not confuse touch and play with contact improvisation. They're not the same thing. And when contact only has a social agenda, it loses its possibility as an inquiry to the social. Social does a very different thing. Social requires that we meet on a ground that we both understand already.
Okay.
You meet on a ground that we both don't understand already, and now we both have to be asking about it. Maybe together, but we're now no longer doing something social. So pushing contact where it's not limited by the social. Unless you've got a social that will stretch.
By social, do you mean like a particular set of boundaries and norms that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So again, help me hold this juxtaposition of the boundlessness of touch and the benefit of boundaries.
So I don't think touch is boundless, otherwise it wouldn't serve us.
You know what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. But I'm wanting to make sure that listeners understand, because they mean in this conversation here in the same way.
Let's go through it slowly then. Yes, please.
Okay. So everything touches everything I don't want to have, personally, don't want to have that confused with boundlessness,
Or boundarylessness. Okay.
boundarylessness.
Yeah.
I think being able that life shows up means it shows up in ways that can be perceived and understood and felt and recognized. We're missing a ton. There's so much that is here, present now, that we're not getting. It's not all available to us. The notion of boundarylessness may be a notion that, hey, you've got further to go. There's more there. And I think that's what the word means when you speak it. When it shows up, it's going to be organized in a way that you can see, which means there are boundaries to it. And you're going to constantly be invited to go further into that thing that you're speaking of as boundarylessness. So there's this constant play between how it is we enter into the unknown and we discover something that becomes available to us. That difference is that play, that oscillation is, it's a kind of it's a profound dance to enter. If you can enter there, if you can live there, it's joyful. It's profound. It's like, oh, the world's going to surprise me here.
I'm free associating a little bit, but I'm thinking about the fact that you are a rigorous teacher, instructor, and yet what you're inspiring in us that are learning from you is this almost an expansive, but this sense of possibility or boundlessness or the something beyond the form, something else besides the form. And it only gets complicated when I try to put those two together, because in practice, it's really clear. We're working within a certain context, and they're given in that there are certain limitations, conventions, and yet there's the magic that comes in is something else.
Right, right. And and when the mind is a body, is a mind, the limits of the body are the limits, could be the limits of the mind that is a body. The limits of the body could be the limits of the mind that is a body. The limits of the mind could be the limits of the body that is a mind. Which means that to break through our cultural domestication and rewild our ability to attend to touch. Let's keep it about touch. We know that the mind is going to, has the capacity to take the body places it's never been. You have to be able to distinguish between fantasy and imagination. Fantasy is what can never be. It's a play of images smashing against images. Imagination is a possible that you have not yet arrived at. And you maybe don't yet quite know how. but you have that inner sense, could be. How could that be? What if? What if? And right now I'm thinking of that crazy bar scene in Star Wars where they take you to a bar and there are all these creatures that are humanoid, but they've got trunks and weird things and it's kind of creepy. And you go, okay, that's somebody's, is that fantasy or imagination? Well, in a world where I read in that same era, a Harper's Magazine talking about a plastic surgeon who's trying to figure out how to put in a cochlear implants in humans to enhance hearing that touches, then you go, is this fantasy or imagination? Are we talking, what are the bounds of genetics and what are those scientists up to? But then I start to say, but why do we have to go all the way to change the genetics? That might be cool too, especially when the brain rewires itself, which it can do very easily. Like if I imagine I have a cane, let's talk about proprioception. I'm walking with a cane, right? And I'm talking to somebody, and the end of the cane is telling me what's happening. I'm not looking with my eyes. I'm there, letting the end of the cane tell me, "Oh, nothing's there. Better look. There's a step." Do I need the cane? Can I proprioceptively? The cane, by the way, gets wired into your brain.
Becomes part of us, yes.
Yeah, so that the brain has actually changed to include the cane.
Yes.
We're so facile. So then, if I just have my imagination and a cane there, what then happens? Do I wire in? And how do I wire in a cane so that I'm understanding the touch that is at the end of the cane? And would I feel that empty step? And what kind of wiring, what kind of having of a cane do I need to do that job? What kind of ears do I need to have sound touch? And we know there are blind people who they make clicks and they hear. They hear 3D.
We have canes all the time in hands-on work. We're always feeling through something to feel something else.
Yes.
Through a bar through a limb to feel the trunk, through the skin to feel the layers underneath, etc. We're always feeling.
Right. So, and the moment you felt through, that is you now. It's in you. You now are that which you are touching.
The knee has expanded into the cane.
You have become that limb, that being. And that's the realm of touch that so deeply needs to be explored further. What happens when identity refuses to be limited to a single skin sac?
So what about co-regulation? What about the nervous system? So that's so much of what happens in contact is that this me that I'm used to expands, and together with this bigger sense of me, there's a different sort of regulation possible.
I wonder what the word regulation means, because every time I hear that word regulation, I fight inside. I have a fight. You want to regulate me?
That's just your unregulated spirit, I think.
Yeah. So co-regulate. I would use the word register. I wouldn't use the word regulate under those circumstances.
Interesting. So that implies a listening or a witnessing or a recognition, I think.
Register, when things register together, they're doing this, right?
Your hands are like going back and forth with each other. Yes.
Yeah, they're touching and they're moving as one movement. They've registered together. Regulate means I'm saying, now you do what I do when I do it,
Gotcha.
and I don't want that. I don't like the word regulate. I don't like that it's become the key term these days.
Well, I have an imaginary listener in my mind who's saying, great, this is all interesting, but what do I do? How do I help a client have a better experience? How do I help myself have a better experience? How do I help them feel safe? What do I do?
You, and we haven't mentioned it yet. But you have worked on me.
Ah, okay.
You've done body work on me, so I know something about your touch.
Okay.
Mind you, I will return for a yet again because it's so extraordinary and wonderful, and works.
Very kind.
Does the job.
Very kind. So thank you for the compliment. It was great to work with you as a toucher backer in your own way. And so what about this listener who's going, okay, interesting, but what do I do?
What do you do? So, you touch back so that you can register together. In contact improvisation, we don't close our hands around each other unless we're counterbalancing and we need to create this link between our bodies. But if we're just moving together, we don't wrap ourselves to constrain one another.
There's not a grasp. There's not a holding.
Not a grasp. There are the offering of ledges and forms that give the other person the possibility of having choice. Like a foot can hook. I might do this with my arms so that I've got a hook that their foot can act on, and now they can fall away. But if they want, they can just slip out. I'm not holding the foot because now they're the one in danger. They're the one in counterbalance, and I'm the one with the choice. Doesn't work for me.
Yes.
So,
on the table, we want the same thing. We want options for our client. We don't want to be controlling things so much that they are being coerced or influenced or put somewhere they're not going already.
Right. You have to listen for the yes, the internal yes, the touch yes. Hearing yes in touch is that's a key. There's a language. And I have to say, and I haven't said this yet, but my interest in touch is the touch of attention, the embodied action of attention as touch, which I am relatively confident is a language and is not a function, a thing that we do.
Language.
And I'm interested in working with people so that they have a capacity to explore that language. And the language is greater than yes, no, but yes, no is an essential place. Hello is an essential part of that language.
It's wonderful. It's great.
And I wanted to answer the thing about how does registering together. It's touch-based. It means you're going to touch, and that touch that becomes is a registration. It's different than a regulation. It's a registration. It's not a regulation.
The touch that becomes, the touch that is unfolding, that is a potential
It's
more than a thing.
Adaptive, that where you lose the boundary, the boundary of your identity. That identity is unstable, essentially unstable, living in an unstable sense of self, because the self can be so many things, so many beings.
Let's see if we can stay in this mood right here. And I want to ask about one more thing. Tell me, this is a question a client asked me yesterday. How do you think about aging? He said.
That is the question right now. Oh my God. How do I think about aging within a realm of specifically of touch, or within
Touch, body, movement.
inspiration?
Yes. He was on my bodywork table. And he's a guy that has written books about aging. So I was like, I was flattered that he asked me, but it's a question I'm pondering as the years go by. And I'm curious how you think about aging in this realm of movement, bodies, physicality, touch.
Well, I'm present with the vulnerabilities that are aging. I think it's extremely important, just thinking about this in the shower, because I think because of stuff that comes across I mean, I don't know if it's happening for you, but when I go online so often, I just went into YouTube to see something, and the ad comes up, and it's about Alzheimer's. And I'm thinking, they're just tracking me as an old person.
They got my amber. They know me, yes.
They know my age. So that now they're wanting me to be concerned about my brain health. And they're wanting to move me towards spending money in those realms. But as I was in the shower and this kind of floated through, I thought, so important for creativity, for the imagination, to not fix on culturally agreed ideas. I was thinking about words and complex words, because I'd very often use complex words. And how words live in so many parts of my brain in varieties of contexts. And if I remain actively recognizing how I'm using this structure, how I'm that I've got more than one place to find a word. They live all through me in lots of ways, and in this body. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. That the imagination that can imagine more than culture offers constantly, stays awake, stays alive, imagines possibilities, goes for them, sees if they work, go for a new one if parts of it works and parts don't. In exploration. Pretty hard for that to go down the old cultural road. Pretty hard for that being to do it the same way. So what is aging? Aging makes the demand to be an adventurer even stronger. But the adventurer becomes one of new hows. How can this be? How can I do it? Contact improvisation appears because of the question of how, and when, and where, and if this, what? those kind of constant inquiries, the question why, least important question there is.
Okay. One thought you want to leave us with? It's been delightful. What would you like to leave us with?
Oh my God. I think the one thought, hello. Yeah.
Perfect. Nita Little, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
We'll do more.
Books of Discovery has been part of massage therapy education for over 20 years. Thousands of schools around the world teach with their textbooks, e-textbooks, and digital resources. Books of Discovery likes to say, learning adventures start here. They see that same spirit here on the Thinking Practitioner podcast, and they're proud to support our work, knowing we share the mission to bring massage and bodywork community enlivening content that advances our profession. Check out their collection of e-textbooks and digital learning resources for pathology, kinesiology, anatomy, physiology at booksofdiscovery.com, where Thinking Practitioner listeners like you save 15% by entering Thinking at checkout. Thanks, Books of Discovery.